It's about beyond experimenting with blockchain. So that means, first of all, I really like to know what you guys are doing in your specific jobs and companies, and then we dive in a little bit deeper on real cases with blockchain. So, Henry, why don't you
Yeah,
start?
so I'm responsible for business development at Quantoz. And Quantoz developed its own blockchain. It's based on the Stellar protocol, but we added a compliance layer on top of the blockchain because we think if you do transactions, even if it are micro-transactions for the IoT where we focus on, they need to be compliant. Yeah? You want to avoid that a washing machine is being used for money laundering. So, and this is basically what we offer and implement at different corporates in Europe, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
Benjamin.
so my responsibility is technical-driven business development. I'm heading our German part of the blockchain initiative. So we have a global center of excellence, and I'm responsible for everything that happens around Germany. And I'm also active in Bitkom as the lead chairman of the Bitkom working group for blockchain. So
Nice.
pretty much doing a lot of blockchain for the last 3 years now. Yeah.
Nice.
And I work at ti&m, so it's an IT consulting company in Frankfurt and in Switzerland. And one of our most famous blockchain projects was with the city of Zug, where we built the world's first blockchain identity. It's still, I think, one of the only that exists. Some other people are, of course, pushing this forward, and it's a real use case. So it's something that the people can actually use, and it's based on blockchain.
Yeah, and that brings up directly the next question: how big have companies to be to actually have a use case for implementing blockchain in whatsoever case? What's your opinion on that?
I think small. So the story is, we started really small. So 2 people from us went to the city of Zug. If those who don't know, so Zug has named itself the Crypto Valley because there are a lot of foundations there. And so we just went to the city council and proposed the project. And it was the idea was we do a pilot phase, we do it really small, and maybe then we expand city by city, and then maybe if some countries are interested, then they can use the same system.
Okay.
So it's really a bottom-up approach.
Okay. Cool.
I think this highly differs what we are talking about. So if you're talking about things that happen in the public blockchain space, it can be as small as 1 person or none. But if you look at the enterprise sector, so where we actually build solutions in the enterprise space, things look quite different. This is also what the numbers are telling us. Bitkom is right now conducting a research study about the usage of blockchain throughout all industries in Germany. And what we clearly can see is you need a certain amount of money to actually dabble in this topic because cloud and everything else that's currently running like AI is competing for the money in the company. So you need at least a certain amount of money or have a certain kind of structure to be forced to really work with blockchain because otherwise it's still not in that kind of focus that I would love it to be. Yeah. Yeah. It's still only a small part of what companies are actually investing in currently.
Yeah. Directly to this, do you think that the blockchain projects you're looking into, that corporates or companies or whatever you want to call your customers actually have something like a business case behind implementing blockchain? Or is it more like an explorational, we just have a use case, why don't we test it, it's cool and it's new? What do you think about it, Henri?
I think we passed that stage, try it out if it's cool. That cannot be the aim of a project.
Sure.
Certainly not with the big corporates we are working with. So, and without a business case, you don't even start. So, what we see, the projects we are doing currently, is that the corporates might have worked for half a year or even longer on a real business case. And blockchain is also not about replacing existing infrastructure, Yeah? So you're not going to put new technology on existing business cases. It's all about new business models and new business cases. So real new business.
Okay. And in terms of the size of the company that wants to apply blockchain into their value chain, what do you think?
Well, I would say size doesn't matter. It's about a consortium. So it doesn't make sense to run a blockchain on your own. Blockchain is about sharing information, giving a bit away from what you own and share it with others, and you expect the same from the others. So it's also not about technology. It's really about organizing new business in a new way. I would say the technology is maybe 20% of the project. The business case, the legal, and the organization is the other 80%.
And culture by that, right?
Yeah.
As well. Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems when trying to come up with a real working business plan, with a real working business model, is actually that most companies are geared toward a traditional model of they are in the middle and they have some customers outside and maybe 1 or 2 partners, maybe 3, but they're basically optimizing themselves and their own processes, and they're optimizing their own costs, and they're not really searching for collaborative models where we could benefit. And this is where the real problem comes in, because everybody's frantically searching for how can I make my costs go down, how can I make it effective by using blockchain, and in those cases you mostly find out you don't. Because it's still for cryptocurrencies it's rather mature, but for everything that we're doing in the enterprise space, where we just picked out the things we really liked about the technology and the philosophy and just built something completely new, and also something really unique for each business case. This is really not mature, and the real problem is actually you need to find partners, you need to build a consortium, then you need to develop and to really work on the business model as a consortium. It gets difficult along the
like
explanation, and then
yeah.
you need to evolve it, and it's not easy to do this in a consortium. If your use case also means that you need a big consortium,
It's
people,
bigger kids, bigger problems.
yeah, and the main challenge is really for finding a business case. They are out there. It's just how much are you able to, what you said, to give away from your own information, to give away from your secrecy, in order to enhance, or in order to create a market or on an exchange platform where you can actually do things.
And this is basically a matter of perspective, because you're talking about they giving something away, but what they're getting is a multiple of that, what they in the perfect case, what they already have, right?
Yeah, but you don't. It's there are people in certain markets that live from arbitration, and if you take that away from them, they're not going to work with you. So it's not going to be easy to find those real business cases where you absolutely need a blockchain and cannot do it otherwise. Because as long as you keep close to your traditional model, you can always do it cheaper with just throw some code in the cloud and it's working and fine. But you need to move to this new space in order to really reap the benefits. Yep. And there are real benefits. There are a lot of markets that are really imperfect.
Speaking of which, I'd like to know a little bit more about the Zug thing and why they decided, and what's the impact and the benefit at all.
So the idea was that we wanted really to try it, so to make it live. So of course we could have built a consortium. We are taking part of consortiums to try to push digital identity forward. Yeah. But here it was a bit more than a year ago. We really wanted to see how it would look like in real. Is it useful? If you think about usual blockchain applications, it looks very complicated, and nobody wants to use it. And also, that's a bit political. So, in Switzerland, we have cities, we have cantons, and then we have Switzerland. So we cannot have a system that's built by Switzerland itself.
Sure.
Because it just won't be accepted, and it's not the way it works.
But basically, it's the startup approach, I would call it. It's a bottom-up versus a top-down perspective, and this is basically, those are the kind of perspectives you got to take. On the one hand side, the consortium makes a lot of sense, but the thing to like bring it to market is perhaps the bottom-up approach, and you first need to find the use case with a private blockchain. And this is basically a cultural discussion we have to have here: public versus private blockchains, right?
And also a money thing, you know, if you and a sponsorship thing from executives, because you know, if you go on a journey, and this is a journey, if you start with identity for itself is nothing. Yeah, you need to do things with it, because just being there, it's not helping. You need to integrate. And if you take, for example, a lot of companies I'm working with are on this journey. The first came to us like, hey, we want to do blockchain. Let's help us think about, yeah, exactly. And so we took them on a journey, and you know, we tried to go the startup way, you know, fail fast, fail early, and do small steps, and each step
Fail cheap.
increment, fail cheap. Yeah, because you know, in order to keep sponsorship, you need to show results that actually mean something, which is quite hard when someone comes to you, I want to do blockchain, so let's do something. But this is the hard work you need to invest, and you need to have a certain budget, a certain breadth, and the right executives to carry this on over a course of some years. You know, in the financial industry, we started about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. Other industries are not that far advanced. So you need to have a certain longevity to those things.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
A bit, yeah. Yeah.
Henri, you have the actual projects. Is it that you go approach customers in terms of, look, we have a use case for your business model, let's do this, or is it more or less like, we have solutions, let's look at your business model and see what we can do?
Well, 3 years ago when we started, we would say we take every blockchain project there is, and on our journey, we discovered that for many blockchain projects you do, there's actually no business case. And at the end, we focused on the IoT world. And the nice thing about IoT that this is a new economy. This is a green meadow waited to be graced. Yeah. So there's no competition. You don't compete with existing systems, and this is where we more and more focus on.
Yeah, okay. And that basically corresponds exactly with what David said in terms of you have to have, or exactly what you said, you have to have those little projects or those small and minimum inversive projects where you can say we make it successful, and by that we approach the market further in terms of a public blockchain after and expanding the scope, right?
That's also what we heard in the previous session. Fintechs focus on real small parts. So, Quantoz, we don't have the ambition to have 10,000 employees, and we want to have a small company with a niche product that is becoming very successful. What I always liked about WhatsApp, that it had 1 billion users and 20 people in the company, and this is I think this is what the new companies are. They have a niche product, but they have a network of 50 or 100 companies they work with.
Yeah.
And maybe to close on your question, I think you can also start with a very visionary use case and then pivot totally. So if you think about Bitcoin, the goal was to build a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And I mean, it's not how it's used today, obviously. So it was used like this, then the FBI decided to close it, and it's been 10 years, and it's not used as a cash system. Yeah. It's used as an investment platform right now.
Yeah. But the use cases are there, you know, especially in the financial industry, you know, with having completely digital assets, you have some kind of a leap start into these things. Tokenization is a very interesting thing when you're looking at investments, because you can allow, for example, a huge spread for even small investment sums. Go to some investment funds and tell them, I have 50 euro a month, I want a spread of 1,000. Could be difficult, but with tokenization, it's actually not really a hassle. And other use cases, so we have active and really live things, so live with customers using them, not just inside a protected environment inside of a company. So there are really live use cases, overseas remittances. So everything that is small payments across borders where the normal cash system is really expensive and slow. There are niches currently, but they're actively used and they will grow, and other cases as well. So interbank trading, interbank business by itself is, is prone to move to something like this because, you don't need that many players to get to a volume that actually makes sense, volume of money, and also the savings that you can achieve. So these systems are pretty much on the verge of being realized. In some parts of Europe, we have already realized such systems, and this is not play things. This is real business running there. So it's not experimenting. So in financial services, the most banks that are still experimenting are the ones that didn't really invest money into getting to know blockchain. Because if you invest 50,000 euro and want to build a blockchain POC, the amounts of things you learn are really small. Yeah? So you need to have at least the breath to fail sometimes before you can really succeed.
Before we start this discussion, I'd like to invite all of you to participate in this discussion, because I guess here are three people that have actual experience with blockchain projects. So basically, if there are any questions, just raise your hand or give me a sign, clap, snap, whatever, so that I can bring you into the discussion.
Yeah.
As I said this, I'd really like to dig a little bit deeper into the whole, how do companies get started with such projects? Because I think this is the biggest problem of all. It's like a big topic out there and nobody knows how to tackle it. What would be, I mean, you Henri, you tested a lot of use cases, a lot of industries. What's with the financial sector? What happened there? Did you have any experience there?
Yeah, so we're actually implementing, and it's not much different except for the regulation, as I said. So the technology is maybe 15 or 20%, and everything else has to deal with regulation, terms and conditions between the consortium partners. But it's not as fast as other industries maybe, but it's moving, yeah? And it will not stop. And it will not disappear. So the blockchain will stay there and I think in many different areas of the financial world. Yeah, so the whole. So I think that digitization is not longer the topic, but it's tokenization, yeah, and everything will be tokenized, and everything that is tokenized can be transported on the blockchain. So all assets can be transported peer-to-peer once they are tokenized and once they're on the blockchain. So it's just the beginning.
And talking about assets, I mean, everything, every piece of information, every piece of value that is transferred is somehow tokenized. And therefore, what's your take? I mean, this all concludes for me in one thing, that no matter what technology we're looking at, and digitization as in general, it is basically a change in business model. You said it before.
The thing is, the problem with the hype is, on one side, the ping pong. We nerds develop something really cool, and then Gartner gets to know it and draws the hype curve, and then everything just goes wild, and everybody's fantasizing of what this thing could be, and then you realize what the things that we were telling you from the start were actually correct, and this is normal. Yeah, this is really normal. What we currently see is. It's vital that the ideas come from business and not from IT, because we IT always think we know best, but they know their business, so they should really be the ones designing those cases where they actually make sense, because regulation and organizing everything is really hard. But what we currently have is a total overemphasizing of the technology, because in the end, the blockchain, if you look at the real world solution, a really real-world solution, then blockchain is just a small part of it. You have a lot of other things around, because in the end, if you put everything into the blockchain, you're probably doing it wrong, yeah? And so really, a lot of confusion comes from the fact, that you don't throw blockchain into a problem and then it magically disappears. it solves a vital part of the problem you have when you want to work in a collaborative environment. But it doesn't solve everything, and the rest is still hard because it's real-world solutions. You don't build them in 2 months. You build them in 1, 2, 3 years.
This goes with a quote of I guess it was the ex-CEO of IBM who said, if you digitize a shitty process, you still have a shitty digitized process. So first things first, look at your processes, look at your business cases, then take the solution that's best to enhance it.
The thing is, and I'm rather for experimenting, in order to really fully understand this new technology, you need to work with it. So you cannot just read 3 books and then you're an expert on blockchain, because they're mostly too old already because it's so fast, and there's not really a good way for business people to get into this topic without getting their hands dirty in such projects. So you should give them a place. And no, not every use case actually needs blockchain, but you might start something and realize that you're building a platform, and this use case in the greater scheme of things actually then makes sense. You shouldn't be too hard on those things, because cracking down and always asking, is this really needed, might hinder your learning process into finding what's really working for your organization or for your market. That's what I'm really advocating for, because I get this question a lot of times, is this really necessary to do it with blockchain? And sometimes the answer is no, it's not really necessary, but it would make sense to try it out. To maybe find something, All of the companies that are currently really successful with blockchain, they tried out a lot of stuff. So
sure. What was the value proposition you presented to the canton of the city of Zug, I guess? The canton is right.
So it's the city of Zug?
Yeah.
So no, it's actually quite small, so 30,000 people. And maybe just to recap, so the city of Zug actually is the crypto valley because they have a lot of Stiftungen. So Stiftungen, I don't know in English, foundation, that gets the money. So the story is Bitcoin and Ethereum were placed there, and people sent like $80 million at the beginning of Ethereum, and then it grew to $100 billion, more or less. And that means there is kind of, it's not really a company, it's a Stiftung that has 100 billions. And now that was the question for the city of Zug. So what do they do with this? And it was also the question, so how could you bring something to the citizen? So the first part is that we propose to them is to build a digital identity. On this, then they made a project with blockchain e-voting, and then all their city services would work together. And it would be a bit an example, not just for the startups and the Stiftungen that are there, but for the blockchain world in general.
Sorry, I have to ask, I'm not that deep into the topic. What actual problem did you solve? Just out of curiosity, because
Well, the $100 billion spending.
So the problem is, if you get an identity card, you can have it in your pocket, and you can bring it to whoever you want, and nobody will know that. So the country won't know that you've used your identity card somewhere.
All right. So it's about tracking and trust-based interactions, basically, right?
Exactly. So the country cannot take your identity card instantly from you. Okay. So the idea was, if you build it decentralized, you have the same properties as normal identity cards, but in a digital manner. Of course, you don't want to put your personal information on the blockchain. Okay. So that's when it went interesting.
Smart. Okay, so but that means, again, there must be a use case that's really practical, that's really small. How long did it take for you to implement this? How long
it was a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 30,000 people.
From start to live. So.
Okay, how many people were involved in that kind of project, and from what areas in the city?
So it was a small project. So there are a couple hundred people who have it.
Okay.
The important stuff is that there is still not a digital identity in Switzerland. So still 1 year after this.
Okay. So but the success story is there, right? I guess this is one of the biggest topics in the whole industry, perhaps in the financial sector or in any other industry with innovation. I think this has to be communicated in some way that it's consumable, right?
You know, if you look at what we're doing in Germany, for example, the digital identity card, it works everywhere, and it was just the German state that just developed it, but it doesn't work. So it's not a technology problem. It's a problem of how to get things running, how to get enough partners to use this stuff. You know, if you use your identity card here for any services, which ones you can use? It's basically nowhere. It's cumbersome because it was still physical. This is now something that's really in the digital world, which, you know, enables a lot more interesting use cases. Because if you have a certified identity that's actually digital and transferable between or usable between different networks, it's something completely different than the things that are currently there, which are possible with current technology. Yeah. Because who would run German cloud? Yeah.
Nice point, yeah.
But there's the problem about consortiums. So I would be even more extreme from what you said before. We tried to get into consortiums, so the project we did now is an international standard. So with the World Wide Web Consortium, this is just really slow. So once you get into consortiums, it takes just a year to have what you already have as a standard. And the time it gets to be adopted can take years and years. That's why our approach is you build it first and then you try to standardize.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this goes altogether again into the startup topic and the way the startups work in order to build really focused solutions, one after the other, and then combined somehow it's an ecosystem or whatever. What can be done to, I mean, there are the success stories. What can be done to make it a standard, to look at your business case, your value chain this way, and how can we teach people to do so? Because it actually would enhance the whole humanity, I would say, if we are thinking that way.
It's a matter of time at some point. You know, we have the year 2018 and banks are starting big data projects. It takes some time until things are really get taken seriously. You know, with the maturity we currently have for the enterprise sector, a lot of use cases are still far from being realizable just because of this maturity. Some are realizable, yeah, not everything. But you know what you can currently do as a company, as a bank, take it seriously. Put someone really far ahead of your food chain in a position where he actually searches for such things. It's not just an experiment of your IT and 2 or 3 people. If you do it like this, then you should take the decision now to be a follower and be quite clear on what that means for you, that you are going to use the platforms others are going to build. And if you want to be ahead of the curve, you need to really invest now. You need to really do things, and you need to really position it correctly in the company hierarchy.
Okay. Yeah. So what we've learned is that blockchain or projects, innovation projects, it's not about marketing. Yeah. So if the innovation is not a part of your marketing budget, and all projects that we run successfully, at the end of the day, they were backed by someone from the board, and we also had the chance to meet with these people and show what we are working on. And it's always nice if you do this kind of project that you are backed by a board member, because it gives some priority to your project. So I see at least this is happening now in Germany with the DAX concern, but also this German Mittelstand, that innovation is of the highest priority for them. Yeah? So there is budget for innovation and also to experiment with new technologies.
I mean, there was a time where there was research and development actually budgeted in every company. Yeah. I think this is a paradigm shift that we have to look into, that this actually must be established once again, right? So saying, taking this all into account, the size of the company, the way you look at blockchain, public, private, what would you say, and I know it's a little bit of a tricky question, but no matter how big the company is, what would you say would be an amount of money to really invest, to have the potential to test certain use cases? Does it depend on the company size? Does it depend on the revenue of the company? What do you think? Just
if you want to get to the point that you're solving a real-world problem of yours and not just a fragment of it, you should look into amounts about €1 million, because if you're doing substantially less, then you're going to oversimplify things and not really find the problems. And to build consortiums, you need to invest a little bit into people. If you go way beyond this, it doesn't necessarily speed you up. Yeah, because learning takes time, and you cannot throw 50 people in and expect them all to learn. So you need to somehow find this balance. But you shouldn't spend really below 250,000, because otherwise you will not learn anything. Then just take your time and wait for the others to bring the copy and paste solutions to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I think about, again, as I'm a startup dude, I always think in those metrics. When I'm thinking about startup financing, there's always like the idea stage, the prototype, the MVP, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Basically, you mean coming to the MVP, the minimum viable product. That means the one solution that actually solves a problem,
Yeah.
which is supported by a business case. That means for the MVP, you would say like $1 million is needed, right?
For $1 million, you get a really good solution. If you look at, for example, this cross-country or cross-border payments thing, you can get it way cheaper because you can use already existing infrastructures and companies. But it's just a rough number. If you have a really complicated problem, then maybe just sketching the problem and sketching a possible solution might take months, and then convincing everybody in your consortium to actually follow you with what you have designed here takes at least 4 months, and then building it is 2 months or something. In the end, the solution is going to be the smallest part of the money spent. Yeah. The most of the money gets spent by really understanding the problem and really understanding how to solve it.
What would you say?
I think there is maybe no maximum in the blockchain world, and it's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
So if you see, there are now startups with $100 million,
Yeah.
and they're building really cool tech, inventing a lot of stuff, but they're not actually solving a use case.
Yeah.
Because it's not their goal. So they were financed to build some new technology, and they are doing it. Now on the market side, if you really want to be efficient, you can use the standard startup model, and also maybe not build a Stiftung, because in a Stiftung you have a clear goal and you're not independent, so you cannot pivot. And that's something a lot of startups don't understand. So once they build it, then they are not in control of the direction of the startup. They're not a startup anymore.
Okay. So that means there is no limit above, but beyond, what would you say what is the minimum amount of money someone should invest in order to test it right?
I would also start at 100,000 minimum for if you want to build an MVP, and then you get the angel, the VC, and then
Yeah, sure.
you work your way up like the other startups.
Yeah, definitely. That's true.
Yeah, well, there are examples of one-man startups that have built very successful blockchain technology-based applications. So the minimum price for an MVP is just one person, who has the courage and the ID and to bring that to the market. Because don't forget that I would say 99% of all blockchain technology software, all DLT software, is open source, and you can use it for free. You take it from the community, and the community expects you to give it also back to community. But it's let's say that it is so easy to start your own company and build something from scratch, because everything you need is there. So if you as a person want to build your own MVP, you don't need any money except for the time. So But as a corporate, you might invest 50 or 100,000 euros to do a MVP.
Okay, so for me that adds up to two directions which are really closely related. On the one hand side, you have the technology, which you guys say is just 20% of the party. The other 80% are people. On the other hand side, you have the implication when it comes to integration and to starting actually these processes, and you say, sure, you can start with one person and then work your way up the ladder. So basically, it all comes down. I mean, blockchain for me is an essential technology in the next centuries, basically, because it's about trust and it's about open ecosystems. But it all comes down into cultural change. How is that even implemented in projects that you do? Is there a learning and development phase where you go with kind of tons of people into workshops and say, okay, guys, look, this means that, and the whole blockchain topic means that we have to open up to the public and so on? What role does that play in that whole process of yours?
A big one. The digitalization, good for us, opened up a lot of companies actually for those approaches, because you cannot go the standard route with blockchain solutions. You know, if you want to build a new system, realizing overseas remittances for a very cheap price in normal traditional ways of doing things, it wouldn't be 50,000 euro. It would be also really expensive. And so the blockchain solution itself will be near that figure. It will basically do a lot of things more efficient, and you might take some shortcuts, but you shouldn't expect to have only 10% of the cost. But you know, this experimenting, this learning curve is vital, because when companies start with the topic, they basically know what they can read on the internet. And one of the most questions I still get is, blockchain, isn't that just totally energy inefficient? You're laughing, but this is a question I get at every meeting I have with customers. And this is, you know, the gap in knowledge that we need to overcome. And this you cannot overcome by just telling people, read this book or give a 50 minutes presentation. It doesn't help. They need to experience. So you need to build this learning. You need to build in exactly the processes like you would do normally in a startup, because otherwise they're spending too much money on failing. And they're pretty open now for this kind of things. In my experience, especially, you know, when you do blockchain, you always land in the digitalization corner, and they're mostly open to those kinds of processes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for the users, it's clear that it should not be visible that it's actually blockchain. So the most famous startup in the blockchain world is Coinbase, and they really had a use case. So they started building a Bitcoin wallet the first year, and they noticed it was too complicated, and then they built their whole business model around it. And no bank wanted to do something like Coinbase did. Still not sure why, but they got really successful. So they partnered with a bank in Estonia, and they built something completely new, like you could send the money and then get some cryptocurrencies. And they had to build a whole infrastructure on this, and also the whole regulations, the whole AML story.
Okay, and what's your take on the whole culture thing? What percentage of the process in doing such project is a cultural change and cultural education, basically?
So here, if we take it for the users, the problem before was that blockchain was just for geeks. So as it was a perception that this blockchain stuff is not for normal people. And so that was the goal of Coinbase, is to show the people you can actually get a foot in this ecosystem, and it's really easy.
Yeah. So basically, you differentiate between users and your customers that are using the technology to enhance their business. So on the one hand side, you have to say, okay, dear user, you're just getting a better experience and more value out of what you have with the technology that you don't necessarily have to understand.
So for our customers, they want to try to experiment something.
Sure.
But they don't always have the use case. So that's our goal, to see what can be useful for the users. Here we had digital identity, and to see technologically why it has never been solved and why it's still a big problem. Now we're working in healthcare, and in healthcare you have, obviously it's decentralized, so you don't have your patient data just in one hospital. And the question now in our projects is how can you split this and give the power to the user? So you have an actual use case, and maybe you can solve it with the technology.
Okay. Henri, what do you say?
As you said, you're working on use cases, and it's evolving. But again, what I said before, 80% of your investment goes to cultural change.
Okay.
The technology is only a small part.
Sure. But that means that you guys are basically in the cultural change consulting too, in a way, right?
Somewhat, if you take people on this journey, you need to take them by the hand and lead them for a certain part, especially if they come to you, I want to do blockchain. Okay, we can do blockchain, and we can find a way to guide you through this so that you can still get to a reasonable goal in a short amount of time. Normally you would do it quite different. You would ask, what is your business problem? What are you trying to solve? What new market do you want to address? And then search for the correct technology. And this is the hype. It's the other way around. But it's perfectly fair to do this, and this doesn't mean that you don't end up with something reasonable. It's just the process is a little bit different. And you don't need cultural change on a large scale. You don't need that. You just need to have a successful product. And so as long as the team you're working with and their superiors, which are basically sponsoring them, understand what you are doing and are with you in that process, it works. So you don't need to completely agilify a company just to do something that's agile. You need to have your secure space for that. Yeah.
Okay. So perhaps if there are no questions from the audience. There's a question.
Finally.
I think we left something out.
Thank you.
God.
My name is ti&m. I'm banker, not IT.
Yeah.
So my question is, when I hear blockchain, I think it's an interesting technology. But I wonder always that everyone, not everyone really, would like to use blockchain. For me, it's reasonable that I have a business idea and go to this business idea and asking myself which technology will be the best. So when I come to you, would you have a checklist to check if my idea, business model, is really applicable for blockchain or not? And when we're talking about blockchain, it's nothing new. If we see German Grundbuch, it's nothing else than blockchain. So it's always a question which idea I have, and can I improve my business model with this technology?
Yeah.
This is basically
exactly that's what it is. So blockchain enables new business models. Yeah? But if your business model or blockchain is not necessary to run your business model, use other technologies. Yeah? It's not the solution for every problem.
Yeah, I think currently, we're in the time of the hype, and the hype is at one side really beneficial, and on the other side, it isn't. The beneficial thing is that actually, we're talking about blockchain, and we have a room full of bankers. This doesn't happen when you don't have hype. It's really as simple as that. Nobody is doing new technology until there's some kind of peer pressure, because we're not optimized to do new stuff every day as a corporation. Normally, we are optimized to do the things that we currently do quite effectively, and try to find new effective things. So the venture into new business is for most companies not really the goal, but to make the existing thing beneficial. So why everyone wants to do blockchain is simple as that. It's the hype. Yeah, not everybody needs blockchain in the year 2018, and not every business model actually needs blockchain. if you are a single supplier and you just have your customers and you don't have any networks at all where you participate, then the chances are high that you might not need blockchain for your core business. Yeah? But banks are really interconnected and financial institutions are really interconnected, and also a lot of manufacturing companies are so much interconnected with their partners and their network that there are going to be a lot of cases where it actually makes sense, but you need to deviate from your current ways a bit. Otherwise, it's not going to work out for you.
So basically, when a customer comes and a potential customer comes and says, "Hey, I want blockchain,"
Yeah.
what are the 2 sentences you're going to say to them?
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. No, the thing is, what I said, you take them on the journey. Just because they're triggered by the hype doesn't mean that you don't end up with something that makes sense.
First
This is
sentence.
this is the big thing. There's no wrong or right way to start. It's how you continue from your start.
Okay.
If you start with IT, trying out new technology, but you get your business people in early and they understand what they are doing, and then they translate that into, what is possible with that kind of technology right now, then you're on the right track.
Okay.
But you see actually projects failing, not because the technology is not ready, not because the supply chain market is not dedicated for blockchain use, but simply because the consortium is not working.
Yeah.
It's actually there was a presentation about IBM in supply chain with their containers and why it's not really taking off, although it would make sense.
Yeah,
So
sure.
why doesn't the chemical industry jump on it, for example? There are good reasons, not because of the technology, it's because of the consortium that's not working.
Yeah.
So it's about the use case and the consortium. Yeah? So,
Yeah.
and again, technology is only 20%.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I don't think we have a precise checklist. But I think it's not just the hype. So if everybody wants to do blockchain, it's because it's a fascinating technology. So it was started in nearly 10 years ago. It will be in January, and the guy disappeared, and then it still works 10 years later. And if you look at the other technologies that made some similar stuff, they're still working, and they never crashed. So you can think, for example, where would it be useful in your bank, for example, if you could have a system that never crashes? For example, what if you could have your e-finance portal that would be always online? And I think that's maybe where we'll see the use case. And so there is no checklist, but I will know for sure in the future.
Yeah.
If you take mobile, for example, we had clients who came to us and asked, what can you do with mobile? It's 2010, and we built one of the first mobile banking in Switzerland, and everybody was saying, no, but this is totally useless. No, it's not secure. Nobody will use it. And now, 8 years later, it's clear that that was the right path to choose.
All right. So first things first, I want to try to summarize it a little bit what we said here. First thing is start small. Find a use case that's worth working on, but know where you're going with this. So define a vision, a purpose, whatever you want to call it. Trust the process. Take it one step at a time. Know that it can fail. Know that it can work out on the way, and you just have something you stick with and go for it. And basically, and the funny part is, I'm a big American football fan, and the head coach of the football team I like is exactly defining this as the goals for a football team, because he says it's about we, not me. It's about thinking in consortiums, thinking in an open ecosystem. It's about trusting the process, going one step at a time, not thinking about the overall solution for everything, but seeing the small problems that have to solve one day at a time. And then again, it's about trust, and trust in the technology, trust in the people that are involved in this. And so you have to start small, you have to make it successful, and then go on the journey and just go with it and make it successful on the way.
I think there's something I want to say about trust, because this was one of the talks we had today. the trust between the difference of trust that this technology brings into your play and the trust into the brand. Don't forget that, yeah, your users are not going to work with the blockchain, they're going to work with your solution, so your brand is still valid, and even if you have a consortium, your brand is still valid because you are offering the service. This blockchain is an infrastructure component. It's not the solution that your end users are going to work with. So,
what a better way to end the Beyond blockchain panel. Thank you very much, guys, for the insights. Thank you.
thank you.